And welcome back to the Financially Simple Experience. I'm your host, Justin, and today I have a special Christmas message for you. Christmas 2020, an amazing year, man. It's crazy what's happened this year. As I look at Christmas, I look at things a little differently than most. Christmas is a magical time for me personally. It's the time of the year whenever Miss Emily and I got married. It's the time of the year whenever key things happened in my life growing up with my father and mother. So I have a lot of precious memories. But Christmas throughout history has proven to fall within the middle of turmoil. And if there's ever been a time in my lifetime that I've seen turmoil in our world, it's this year, 2020. We're in the midst of a pandemic. We're in the midst of political unrest in the United States at this point. And candidly, it's frustrating. It seems like just one more thing's compiled. In my own life, I've had clients this week alone, as I'm recording this just a couple of weeks before Christmas. I've had clients tell me that they have been diagnosed with cancer, people that I know and love. I have clients who told me they're getting divorced. These are people that I deeply, deeply care about. I know individuals whose children have ran away. I know people who are facing death, bankruptcy, you name it. I've heard a lot of heartache. If you compound that with COVID, if you compound that with election and all the junk that we've dealt with this year globally and not much less in the United States, Christmas falls this year, the year 2020, in the midst of turmoil. I'm reminded in my mind's eye of a story that stuck in my head for years now that I read when I was sometime in early 20s. And it talks about the Christmas truce. The story goes like this. In the year 1914, the world was in the midst of World War I. Fighting has been just unbelievable at that point, and some hundreds of thousands of people had died. This idea that this war was going to just be a quick one, that the idea that Europe went to war in the summer of 1914, believing that the war would be over by Christmas, but yet hundreds of thousands of soldiers had been killed in heavy fighting at this point. The German advance had moved through much of the Allies, and they were in the midst of the race to the sea. And the result of that was a bloody, unbelievable stalemate that stretched across the Swiss border to the Northern Sea. It was trench warfare at its finest. It was a time whenever trench warfare, no one expected at that point, but it had settled in. And you have this world engulfed in a bloody, unbelievable conflict. Now, December of 1914, the reality had set in, and in a place called No Man's Land that separated the two armies, it was cold and muddy. It is torrential, heavy downpours had been taking place at this point. And in those days, on the Western Front, life was miserable. It was miserable. It was awful. There was about 50 yards in between these two enemies, with deep trenches that they're embattled in, just a muddy mess. They dug into this area called No Man's Land and put these trenches in place that these armies are sitting in. They're literally in these trenches with 50 yards between these two armies, roughly. Now, the guys in the trenches at this point, they had seen battle, but they hadn't seen the worst that World War I was going to bring to human depravity. They hadn't seen it yet. We hadn't seen the asphyxiating gas at this point. We hadn't seen the mindless slaughter that would take place in the years in the future. At this point, it was pretty much war, not the brutality that would later appear in World War I. In early December, Pope Benedict ascended to the papacy, and he tried to get a truce, an official truce for the holidays. On December 7th, my anniversary, he issued an appeal to the leaders of Europe saying, quote, that the guns may fall silent, at least upon the night the angels sang. But the truce that Pope Benedict had hoped for didn't meet the generals or the higher ups in the military. But that didn't stop the soldiers from taking the initiative. It didn't stop the soldiers. You see, they saw a path to truce just for a little day. Just for a little day. Even though their leaders had rejected it. On December 25th, as it approached, and just torrential rains are setting in at that point, and the battlefields of Flanders were blanketed with a light dusting of snow. German Emperor William II contributed by sending Christmas trees to the front in efforts to try to bolster the morale. On December the 23rd, German soldiers began placing their trees outside their trenches, kind of reaching up and putting them outside the trenches, and they began singing songs such as Silent Night. And the Allies could hear that. They could hear the Christmas carols, and the Allies responded by singing their own Christmas carols.
Our current business climate is a hostile one that challenges business owners with new obstacles every day. Whether you need to improve operations, sales processes, or anything in between, Heritage Business Advisors has helped hundreds of business owners just like you create working solutions for the problems that running a business can present. Learn more at heritagebusinessadvisors.com.
While there were many British troops who didn't really speak fluent German, there were many Germans who at that time worked in Britain before the war, and they were able to facilitate communication between the two groups. Saxon troops on the British side, they were really looking forward to this Christmas truce. By Christmas Eve, the low-ranking British officers had begun ordering their men not to fire unless fired upon. It became a policy known as live and let live. We've heard songs written about live and let live. Yes, that actually stemmed from this particular Christmas truce. As morning broke in this muddy, wet, cold, nasty, as some people would say if you're in the military, just hellhole, snows on the ground, German soldiers emerged from their trenches, waving their arms, pretty much demonstrating that they had no intent for battle that day. And not long after, the British soldiers joined them. They joined in a meeting of no man's land to socialize and exchange gifts. Friends, I don't know about you, but if warriors, I'm talking about men's men, people that were prepared to die, if they can take a break on the magical day of Christmas, we can too. I'm reminded of another historical event that shook the world. The birth of Jesus, which is, after all, the celebration that these warriors were doing. That's why they were singing the Christmas songs like Silent Night, the very night whenever Jesus was born. At that particular time, as the account goes, shepherds were in their field. I mean, these were the lowest of the lows at that particular time in the world. These were the outcasts. They were in their fields, and none other than the angels. In fact, it says a multitude of angels presented them, saying, "Hey, the Christ, the Messiah, is born." Wise men, some people call them magi. I mean, we could estimate that they would be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people would travel with these very well-known, very rich individuals. Magi began traveling to the very place where a supernatural star, as the account goes, ascended above Jesus. Angels were present at this very historic event whenever Jesus was born. It's interesting to me because if shepherds, the lowest of the lows, and wise men, the most astute or the most influential of the influential, and even the supernatural angels can pause to celebrate peace, again, we can too. See, Jesus himself is known as the Prince of Peace. That is his name. As the account says, he was here to bring peace on earth. Now, I've read my history, and I realize what we're dealing with at this time. I do. I realize that we haven't seen a peace on earth since that magical day when 0 AD transpired and Jesus Christ was born in a manger in Bethlehem. I realize that. There will be a day There will be a day. As the account goes, Christ was born as an innocent baby, and he sacrificed himself according to the account so that people could be reconciled to God. That's an amazing offering, all because of Christmas. And as the account goes, he resurrected, came back to life, and he'll return at some point in the future. Friends, if armies can quit fighting, if a world can pause and supernatural events transpire, then I just think that you and I as business owners can pause. Take a moment on this January 25th to wash away our cares, to place our eyes on the reason for the season, as it's often said, to place our eyes on peace. So I implore you, I beseech you, at this particular Christmas, make an extra effort, as I'm going to try to do. Make an extra effort to drown out the cares of this world that we all so easily carry. To make an extra effort to love. To spend the day with our family, our friends, or those who are nearest and dearest to our hearts. And let's forget about this craziness we live in just for a day. Let's join those soldiers, those warriors on the battlefield way back in the early 1900s when they got out of their muddy mess and sang songs together. Enemies sang songs together about the birth of Jesus. Let's join the shepherds, the wise men, the angels, in celebrating peace on earth, the Messiah, Emmanuel, which is God with us. So friends, I realize 2020 has been hard. But we can put a capstone on this year with the only true thing that matters, and that is that we know our Creator and that we give him preeminence in our lives and in our business. That's my message for you today. 2020 has been an unbelievable year. I'm looking forward to 2021. I have a hopeful message coming for 2021. We're going to start off with goals. But let's take a moment and celebrate the birth of Jesus. Y'all have a Merry Christmas. This tip is for informational purposes only. Please speak with a competent financial advisor regarding your specific needs. Justin Goodbread is a registered investment advisor with Heritage Investors. Visit heritageinvestor.com, financiallysimple.com for additional information.